causes and events leading up to our entry into the war. Well, what are the causes? Why are we Americans on the march? Is it because of Pearl Harbor? Is that why we are fighting? Or is it because of Britain? France. China. Czechoslovakia. Norway. Poland. Holland. Greece. Belgium, Albania, Yugoslavia, or Russia. Just what was it made us change our way of living overnight? What turned our resources, our machines, our whole nation into one vast arsenal, producing more and more weapons of war instead of the old materials of peace? What put us into uniform, ready to engage the enemy on every continent and every ocean? What are these two worlds of which Mr. Wallace spoke? The free and the slave. Let's take the free world first, our world. How did it become free? Only through a long and unceasing struggle inspired by men of vision. Moses, Muhammad, Confucius, Christ. All believed that in the sight of God, all men were created equal. And from that there developed a spirit among men and nations, which is best expressed in our own Declaration of Freedom. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. It is the cornerstone upon which our nation was built, and the ideal of all the great liberators. Washington, Jefferson, Garibaldi, Lafayette, Kosciuszko, Bolivar, Lincoln. Lighthouses lighting up a dark and foggy world.
That government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Fighting, living, dying. For what? For freedom, that for which men have fought since time began, to be free.
Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, Give me liberty, or give me death.
But what of this other world? Here, men insisted that progress lay in killing freedom. Here, they were putting out the lighthouses, one by one. Here, the march of history was reversing itself. In Italy, it began when an ambitious rabble-rouser set his followers marching on Rome. The country, like every other country after the last war, was torn by political unrest, hard times, unemployment. Two courses were available to the Italian people. They could solve their problems in a free, democratic way, or they could let someone else do the solving for them. They made the tragic mistake of choosing the second course. They put their trust and faith in this one man. They believed he represented them. Actually, he planned to betray them for the selfish interests of himself and the group back of him, just as he had earlier betrayed those who first supported him. In Germany, another and even more forceful demagogue set his followers marching from the Munich beer halls. He too had the sinister opportunity to take advantage of post-war chaos. But he also had certain distinctive German characteristics to play on. To start with, the Germans have an inborn national love of regimentation and harsh discipline. He could give them that. The German army, and through them the people, had never acknowledged German defeat in the last war and were anxious for revenge. That too he promised them. The wealthy and powerful industrialists were fearful of losing any of their wealth and power and were ready to back anyone who would retain it for them. He promised to take care of them too. This man cunningly played all these ends against the middle and ruthlessly set out to murder the newborn German Republic. In Japan, you expect things to be done a little differently. They were. Here, not one man, but a gang disguised their little schemes as the will of the emperor. And to the Japanese people, the emperor is God. Taking advantage of their fanatical worship of the god emperor, it was no great trick to take away what little freedom they had ever known. Yes, in these lands, the people surrendered their liberties and threw away their human dignity. They gave up their rights as individual human beings. And became a part of a mass, a human herd. Although these countries were far apart and different in custom and in language, the same poison made them much alike. Each got a new uniform. In Italy, the new bosses wore black shirts. In Germany, the shirts were brown. In Japan, they hid behind the uniform of the army. But really, they belonged to a sinister secret society. Their symbol was a black dragon. The other fellows had to have a symbol too. Germany, a swastika. In Italy, the old Roman symbol of the fascists. In Germany, they called the new order National Socialism, or Nazism. In Italy, they had a shorter word, fascism. In Japan, they had lots of names for it. The new era of enlightenment, the new order in Asia, the co-prosperity sphere. But no matter how you slice it, it was just plain old-fashioned militaristic imperialism. The Japs would get the prosperity, and the others would get the coal. They say trouble always comes in threes. Take a good close look at this trio. Remember these faces. Remember them well. If you ever meet them, don't hesitate.
Eine wahrhaftige Weltanschauungspartei sein. Und zweitens, Sie wollten, Herr...
Stop thinking and follow me, cried Hitler. I will make you masters of the world. And the people answered, Heil! Stop thinking and believe in me, bellowed Mussolini, and I will restore the glory that was Rome. And the people answered, Duce, Duce. Stop thinking and follow your God Emperor, cried the Japanese warlords, and Japan will rule the world. And the people answered, Banzai, Banzai. Each system was alike in that the constitutional law-making bodies gave up their power. The Reichstag in Berlin, the House of Deputies in Rome, the Diet in Tokyo. And these elected representatives became collections of stooges, rubber stamp organizations. Applauding on cue the words of the leaders.
Each system did away with free speech and free assembly. Each system did away with a free press and substituted a press controlled by the party. Through their ministries of propaganda, each took complete control of the theater, the movies, the radio. Every cultural activity and every channel of information was controlled by the most important members of the party. Each did away with free courts and trial by jury, and substituted courts and judges run by the party. Each abolished labor unions and the rights of bargaining for wages.
Fertig machen zur Meldung! Achtung! Abteilung 6, 310 mit 1-3-114 beim Grabenbau. Danke. Heil Hitler! Lassen Sie weiterarbeiten. Weiterarbeiten!
And under the pretext of patriotism established a system of forced labor. Each enforced its decrees by an army of secret police who held the power of life and death over every individual. And for the few who still believed in freedom and said so, there was a ready answer.
Con una mazza si può imporre silenzio ai più grandi intelletti del mondo.
The greatest intellect in the world can be silenced with this. That is an exact translation of the words these black shirts cheer so lustily.
Ich sage nur so viel, wenn ich das Wort Kultur höre, dann greife ich schon nach meinem Revolver.
Whenever I hear anyone mention the word culture, the first thing I do is reach for my gun. Yes, they had the answer. The blackjack and the gun. In Italy, they did it different. While in Japan, to their names can be added those of hundreds and thousands of others who stood in the way of the new order. Finally, there is only one obstacle left. The word of God and the word of Führers cannot be reconciled. Then God must go. I am absolutely clear in my own mind, and I think I can speak for the Führer as well, that both the Catholic and Protestant churches must vanish from the life of our people.
Thus spoke Dr. Alfred Rosenberg. And if you have any doubt that he spoke for his Führer, here's what happened. thousands of other men of God, Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, were persecuted, arrested, confined in concentration camps.
Our Führer is the intermediary between his people and the throne of God. Everything the Führer utters is religion in the highest sense. It is only on one or two exceptional points that Christ and Hitler stand comparison. For Hitler is far too big a man to be compared with one so petty.
Every day in all German classrooms,
Adolf Hitler ist unser Retter, unser Held, der edelste Führer auf der ganzen Welt. Für Hitler leben wir und wir sterben gerne wir. Für den Führer bis zum Tod, denn er ist unser Gott.
yes, take children from the faith of their fathers and teach them the state is the only church, and the head of the state is the voice of God. That was the way of life, or better, the way of death, in that other world. Now, what of our world, the democratic world? What did we want? What did we do about it? First of all, we wanted peace and security. And to prove our sincerity, in 1921, we initiated the Washington Disarmament Conference. This resulted in two vitally important treaties. One, to reduce the size of the British, Japanese, French, Italian, and American fleets. And the other, the Nine-Power Treaty, which guaranteed the integrity of China. And incidentally, one of the powers signing this was Japan. Later on, in 1929, we signed the Kellogg-Briand Pact, which was supposed to abolish war as a means of settling international disputes. This pact was signed by 47 nations, including Germany and Japan.
President, I have the honor of handing you the London Naval Treaty.
Faithful to our treaty obligations, we scrapped more than 60% of our naval tonnage, and our army was reduced to a standing force of 136,000 men, smaller than that maintained by the little state of Romania. We let our hopes for peace become so strong that they grew into a determination not to fight unless directly attacked. We let ourselves be influenced by those who said that we could find security through isolation. The confusion in our way of thinking is apparent in the slice of public opinion as it appeared in Pathé News in 1939.
Another war, not for me. This time America should keep out, and I know I will.
If war breaks out in Europe, I think that this country should heed the advice of its first president and avoid all foreign entanglements.
I haven't the slightest idea of European affairs.
In the event of war in Europe, I think we should stay out of it entirely.
And all our efforts should be made to keep out of the fight. Let Europe fight her own battles. They mean nothing to us.
We should mind our own business.
By all means, no.
Yes, fight.
No.
No.
Yes.
If my country calls, yes.
No.
We simply did not want to understand that our individual and national problems were, and always will be, dependent upon the problems of the whole world. And we had individual and national problems to worry about, plenty of them, just as Germany, Italy, and Japan had. But we faced them in a democratic way. We passed laws to give working men a chance to improve their lot. We established an insurance program for those without jobs. We began to give old folks protection against want and hunger. We organized the CCC to provide our young men with healthy and useful employment. A federal works program came into being and changed the face of our nation with new roads, bridges, schools. We built great new dams which brought the miracle of electricity to millions of our people. These were some of our accomplishments, but there were others not so creditable. We turned our backs on the League of Nations. We passed the Tariff Act to set a higher wall of isolation around us. We encouraged lawlessness with the farce of prohibition. But in spite of these mistakes, we never had a thought of losing our free institutions. John Q. Public still ran the country. He had his choice of voting for Dewey, Wilkie, Roosevelt, or anybody else. In Germany, they had the choice of voting for Hitler, Hitler, or Hitler. Over here, John Q. still read what he pleased. And although he heard of books being burned in other countries, he would have laughed if anyone had told him his books would ever be burned. And on Sunday, if he felt like it, John Q. went to any church he pleased. most of all, he got a kick out of seeing his kids grow up. The average American was quite unconscious of the fact that some people had this in mind for the little John Q's.
Viel mehr, Jung. Wollt ihr auch so sagen?
While their children were being trained to kill, John Q's kids were giving their pennies to help them have life. And when we saw these men in the newsreels, quite often we laughed. To us, they looked like characters in a musical comedy. But they weren't comic. They weren't funny. They were deadly serious. They were out for world conquest. And what made it doubly serious was that there were 70 million Japanese, 45 million Italians, and 80 million Germans, all hopped up with the same idea.
Sie sagen, deutsches Volk hilft dir selbst. Jeder soll helfen.
Their leaders told them that they were supermen. Herrenvolk, the Nazis called it. The master race, destined to rule all other peoples on Earth. Take a good look at these humorless men. These were to be the rulers of the ruling race.
Leben, auch ihr bürgerliches Dasein ist gesichert in diesem nationalsozialistischen Staat.
Obey us blindly, and you will attain your rightful place in the world. All other people will be your slaves. That's what they promised them. That Americans, Chinese, Russian, South Americans, all free peoples would work for them and make them rich. And how they ate it up.